Hello friends, it is Saturday evening and I'm about to head off to my parents' house because my cousins are in town. So we're having like a little family evening and I actually have a pretty big week this week. I've got a lot going on, got plenty of appointments, meeting with some friends over the weekend. And on Tuesday, yes Ollie, it is my first day back at work after almost 7 months since my injury. On top of that, recently I uploaded, well actually it's going up tonight, but it will be recently for you. I'm uploading my latest big book challenge, reading the Golem and the Djinni, which I have right here. I just finished it this week, and I mean if you watch that video you will know that I really liked this book. It's an historical fantasy that reads very kind of like steady pace, very character driven, with really beautiful kind of like folklore mystical elements that centers two mystical creatures, the Golem and the Djinni, just kind of like trying to get by, surviving in late 19th century New York. Anyway, I mentioned in that video that when I initially picked up that book, I thought it was a standalone, but it turns out it's not. And I was kind of umming and ahhing whether I was wanting to read the second book, given that the first book reads so well as a standalone. Well, in the few days since I finished that book, I just kind of keep thinking about being in that world and being with those characters, and I miss them. So I did. I bought The Hidden Palace, which is the second book. So I thought we could do basically a big book challenge, just a whole lot more chill. So it's kind of reading vlog, kind of life vlog, just hanging out. Does that make sense? I feel like that makes sense. Blair and I did actually go to the pool today, so I got some of my like hydro exercises in. My hand's pretty swollen, so I better put my bandage on before we go. And then another thing we did today actually was I went to a local comic book store. It's called Big City Comics or something in West Footscray, because a friend of mine whose partner is sick, I've mentioned them before in the vlogs, he ordered some comics quite a while ago, but they live on the other side of town, and given that his partner is so ill, it's just been hard for him to make his way out my way. So I thought it was just easier if I went and got them for him, and I'll take them around next time I visit. And the staff there were lovely and gave me several recommendations, and I did not walk out empty-handed myself. So I'm a little bit pressed for time right now. We're supposed to be heading off, but maybe tomorrow I can show you what comics I picked up at the comic book store. Because I'm not really a comic reader. I'm a graphic novel and a manga reader, but I don't think I've ever really read like a comic before. But I mean, I'm up for trying something new. Anyway, we've given Ollie a brush and we need to get her in her little jacket because my cousins are like on the side of the family of my grandparents who passed away last year. So they know and love Ollie very well, and I'm sure they can't wait to see her. And I think they've actually brought their dog with them too. So it's gonna be like a little dog party over at Mum and Dad's with 3 dogs. So hanging out, going back to work, reading The Hidden Palace, and just whatever else we get up to is what you've got in store for the next few days. So let's get started. If it looks like I'm dressed in glorified pajamas, that's because I am. It's Sunday afternoon. It's solidly afternoon already, and I honestly could have spent all day in bed today. We had a really fun time last night with my cousin and his wife and my family. We played 2 games of Mysterium, and it was a great evening. But I don't know, man, that much socializing and that much teaching people games, it really took it out of me. And I woke up today just feeling like my brain was tingling a bit, and like I wanted nothing more than to stay in bed for the next like 6 days. But I've managed to get up because we have plans today to go and meet a friend. She's my manager, but she's also a friend, and another friend at a like a board game cafe today, and we just wanted to hang out and play some board games. And I've really been looking forward to this week, and part of me wants to like phone in sick, but the other part of me knows that once I get there, I'll enjoy myself, even if I am a little bit more quiet or reserved or whatever than I might normally be, you know? I did read a little bit of this last night. I'm up to like page 50. So far, it's mostly just been kind of like reintroducing us to the Golem and the Djinni with like a little bit of a reminder of what happened in the previous book, but it's kind of explained in quite a nice way, so it doesn't just feel like, here's what you missed on Glee, you know? Also, I really liked the prologue. It just kind of immediately set me back into the tone and everything. It was just a little bit of an exploration of how humans tell ourselves stories and how those stories like travel across the world and kind of get reinterpreted by different people in different cultures and different times, and that the same thing happens with the Djinn. And then it kind of leads into saying that, you know, the Djinn, Ahmad, in our story, also kind of becomes legend amongst his own people. And here it is, here's the tale. It kind of seems like it sets off pretty soon after the last book finished. So we're just getting reacquainted with Hava at her bakery, and Ahmad has come back to New York, and now he's working with Arbili in the like tinsmith shop thing again, and they've reconnected and they're going on their little walks around New York late at night. I'm just really liking being back, you know, like nothing revolutionary is happening, but it's got a very similar sort of style of writing and pace and everything. It just feels like I'm back home, so I'm happy about that. Then briefly before we head off, the other thing I said I was going to show you are the two comics. I feel like one of them's a graphic novel, but I don't know where that line kind of is, that I picked up while we were at the comic shop yesterday while I was collecting my friend's comics for him. He's got some weird, interesting looking ones that I won't show you, but the ones that I was recommended was Monstrous. This is volume 1. Who's this by? Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. And I have seen this around quite a lot. So as soon as he pulled it off the shelf, after I told him the sorts of things I'm interested in, I was kind of like, okay, maybe it's time. I don't really know what to expect, but I mean, I'll give it a go. And then one of the other ones he mentioned was Middle West, and this is like an omnibus bind-up of the complete series, which I'm always a fan of. This is by Scotty Young and George Corona. And I don't know a lot about this either, but I think there was an animal companion, and maybe it even talks, and you know, like, I mean, I'm a sucker for that sort of stuff. It sounds like it's about a kid who's kind of really struggling with home life, like a bit of a whimsical take on like the darker parts of life. So, I mean, as you can see, these are all sealed up. I didn't even get to have a little bit of a flip through to get a sense of what I'm in for. But I feel like I have so many children's graphic novels that sometimes I don't make as much space for like adult graphic novels and stuff that I have always really enjoyed. And of course, they're like a local little indie business that I hadn't heard of before. I always love supporting those, especially when it comes to books and publishing. Anyway, like I said, we are heading off this afternoon. I'm gonna have my cup of tea and just kind of like breathe and prepare myself to try and be at least a little bit social.
Blow my heart out like a daisy. You just pick, or you can leave me in the garden deep and rich. Oh, I can't wait till the earth quakes so I can shake you off. Now let me float far away. 4, 3, 2, 1, take off. Let me down easy now, 'cause you know I've been at your beck and follow you wherever you go. I'm at your beck and call. Oh, 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 oh. I'm at your beck and call me.
Welcome to Monday. Today I have my first appointment with my new psychologist. The psychologist I've been seeing since like 2015, I think, who I adore, has gone on maternity leave, which like great for her, not so great timing for me, but that's okay. She's put me in the safe hands of a colleague who I get to meet today, so hopefully that goes well. Anyway, that's on telehealth, so I thought that that was the only thing I had to do today, and I was just gonna like chill and read and maybe do a bit of editing around that. But I also had to make a phone call. I saw my doctor on Friday and he has given me permission to return to work, but he also wants me to get a second opinion from another hand surgeon about my injury, just because of like how long it's taking to heal and the fact that I'm getting more pain and more swelling again in the last couple of weeks. All of this could be down to the fact that my body is bendy and weird, but I would feel a bit better, I think, as well, getting a second opinion. Anyway, I made that phone call today, and it turns out that even though they're usually very busy and have long waiting lists, they had a cancellation for this afternoon. So I'm going this afternoon to see my new hand surgeon. Luckily, Mondays are a day Mum usually has off, so she's gonna come with me. I just feel so much better having someone with me at all of these appointments, because there's just so much to keep track of, so much to remember, and you never know how people are going to respond to you, and I've just been invalidated and dismissed so many times with this injury and with plenty of other things. So it's nice to have backup. Hopefully I won't need that backup, but I mean, either way, I get to hang out with my mum a little bit this afternoon, so that's nice. So we've got a little bit on today. I also managed to read quite a bit of this book last night. I'm like a good third of the way through. And I mean, obviously I'm not going to get into this book as much as I did the first in the other video, but I think in a lot of ways this is kind of similar in the sense that there are things happening and I could break down like every little thing, but at the same time it kind of feels like not a lot's happening. Like with the first book, a lot of what we read is kind of like vignettes and like little stories and threads of side characters, some of whom aren't even connected to the Golem and the Djinni in the beginning. We've been following Sophia a little bit and her travels in the Middle East. And then we're also introduced to a rabbi and his young daughter. And the rabbi kind of seems a little bit obsessed with creating his own golem. So there's another golem running around New York. He seems a little bit more crude and less like beautifully made than Hava. So I don't think he would pass off as a human in the same way Hava does. Anyway, that's what's going on with the book. As I said before, I'm just enjoying reading it. I think the fact that even though it's interesting and compelling, but doesn't feel stressful, I love it. I love it. Like, this is what I want. And part of me is actually starting to wonder if, you know, this whole journey of me trying to get into fantasy, I've been going the wrong way about it. Am I an historical fantasy stan? Like, is that who I am? I'm not exactly sure, and I think I would have to have a bit more of a think about that. And I'm sure there's exceptions to every rule, right? But like, my other favorite book this year so far is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, which is very much historical fantasy. And I'm not so much sure if it's the historical fantasy itself. I think I do like the old-timey vibes, but I think too it might be something about the fact that it's low fantasy, essentially. Like, it's not page after page like trying to describe this weird, wonderful, magical world with a completely different like society and caste system and whatever the fuck else. Instead, because it's mostly familiar just with some interesting mystical magical elements, I get to really enjoy the hints of whimsy and magic without becoming kind of like overwhelmed with info dumping. And I get to just enjoy the characters. I don't know, maybe it's just these books and I'm enjoying them so much, but I'm just starting to wonder if there's something there. Because we already know that I'm a very character-driven reader and I am someone who appreciates a good sense of atmosphere. We know that across pretty much all genres. And I'm just starting to wonder if maybe high fantasy, like, that's just a little bit harder to do when you've got so much other world building and, you know, society building to do. Anyway, just some food for thought. I am going to go and actually make myself a cup of tea and sit down and do a little bit more reading before my psychologist appointment this afternoon, because reading this just feels rejuvenating. I don't know how else to put it. I think because of the pace and because I feel so comfy with these characters, and it is interesting without being too high stakes and too much tension, it feels restful for my mind reading this, and that's exactly what I need right now. So I've got about an hour before my next appointment, and part of me obviously wants to smash through and find out what's going to happen and how all these threads tie together. The other part of me just wants to savor it and make this last as long as possible. You know, it's not the kind of story or plot that is kind of just like blowing my mind and is unlike anything I've ever read, and like I can't stop talking about it, although I mean my video was 40 minutes long. It's just the kind of book that I love being in, you know? Anyway, that's enough. I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna go read.
Summer turning cold, baby's growing old. I'm buying every mood I want. Revolution for a change, playing a list of game. A weekday turned to holiday. too soon. I got freedom underneath the blue full moon. Feels eternal. I knew it could be gone too soon.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to Tuesday, my first day back at work in like 6 months. I'm honestly pretty nervous, but to be fair, of all the days I could go back to work, today is quite a nice way to ease me back in. Basically, today I am meeting with my fellow Children's Prize judges, and we are coming up with our shortlist for the Readings Children's Prize. So it's nice in the sense that I won't be in the shop, I'm not dealing with customers, I don't have to recommend books, I don't have to do all of that, and I'm going to be hanging out with my colleagues for a few hours. But it's pressure in the sense that, you know, there's some books that I really care about that have been submitted to the prize that I want to go to bat for, you know? And look, I'm not under any delusion, this is not the Katey Prize, I'm not going to end up with my perfect shortlist. But I still want to be proud of the shortlist that we, put our names on, And honestly, I feel like I'm a little bit of the odd one out when it comes to which books I feel most passionately about, but I suppose we'll just have to wait and see. Yesterday, my appointment with the new surgeon for a second opinion, honestly, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I don't know. It's hard at this stage not to get your hopes up a little bit. When you go and see somebody new. But more or less it came down to the fact that the hand surgeon that I already have been seeing has a very, very good reputation. And so this new hand surgeon just kind of figured that, whatever he said is probably true. And it's not that I don't believe him, it's just, he doesn't seem to be as concerned with how long this is taking as I do. And he doesn't seem to understand how much it's impacting my life as I do. And I was just hoping for something, just another option, an alternative something. But anyway, I don't want to get too down thinking about that this morning. I've got big things ahead today. I did read a decent amount of this yesterday, but obviously I've got other books on my mind right now. So I'll save talking about that anymore for maybe tomorrow. Today I've got to head in obviously for this meeting, which is scheduled where we've allowed 3 hours, but I mean, we'll just see how that goes. And then this afternoon, Blair is coming with me to my hand therapist appointment. So I'm not entirely sure yet what I'm going to be doing in between those two things. I mean, I guess that depends in part on how long the prize meeting goes for. I have a few options. I might come home, I might go to the city, I might go to work to have a look at some books and pick up some pre-orders. It just depends how much time I have and what I feel up to. But unfortunately, that does mean that little Ollie is going to be home alone today. Obviously, she has everything that she needs here, but she's definitely a people dog. And being home alone is not her favourite thing. So I'm giving her lots of cuddles now to make up for it. And I'll give you even more tonight, I promise. Honestly, I think we would both be happier if I could just take her everywhere. But alas, I cannot. Anyway, I've got to head off to this meeting. Wish me luck. Keep your fingers crossed that at least a couple of the books that I'm really passionate about, I managed to convince everybody deserve to be on that shortlist.
More on the fade. I know you
apologies for looking the way that I do, but this is the best I could do today. Today is actually Thursday, so I didn't check in with you yesterday, the day after I went to work. Mostly just because my hand was so sore after Tuesday. So it was a rest and read day yesterday, and I did actually finish The Golem and the Djinni Part 2, or The Hidden Palace. But before I get to that, I thought I would tell you about the books that I picked up while I was at work, and also how the meeting went. Obviously, I can't give you the details, but it was a really good meeting, and like I really liked talking to everybody that was there. And in fact, one of the other judges is a really good friend of mine at work. However, we had a really hard time agreeing on the shortlist, to the extent that we weren't able to come to a conclusion by the end of the meeting. I did get one of the books that I'm very passionate about on the list of like the books that everybody agrees on, but two of the other ones, I think they're pretty much gone. And then the last one that is my favorite of all of them, and that if I had to back any book that I want on there, it's this one book. I went in with notes, I went in with an argument, I came prepared to fight for this book, and for a complicated range of reasons, the other judges weren't able to come to a conclusion, and so then there were a couple of other books kind of thrown back into contention for that like last spot. Anyway, long story short, we've all been given just a couple of extra days to go back and read and reread some bits of books, and we have to agree by tomorrow. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that somebody else sees what I see in this book and I managed to get it on there. Anyway, after the meeting, one of my colleagues was going to work, so she drove me, and I picked up, I had a pre-order. You can probably guess what that is, and that's this massive book here. It's Beyond the Story, which is the BTS biography, and it is huge. It's absolutely massive. And so I actually bought another copy for my friend Annie, who you met recently in one of my vlogs, and I've sent it up to her, and we're gonna be doing like a little book club and reading a chapter together every week or something. Then while I was there, I also picked up a proof. This is The Camp is Doomed by Anna Zobel. I think this is a new series by the author who did Little Gem. Little Gem was actually shortlisted on the Children's Prize last year, and I read that in the video, which I'll leave a link to in the cards above. That was one of my favorites on the shortlist last year. It was very sweet, it was very cute. So when I saw she's got a new one out, like, I definitely want to read this one. The Rundown Camp in the Woods, No Phone Reception, 10 Students with Untested Powers. I don't know, it's coming out September and I think it'll be fun. Then I also bought a couple of other books. This one my colleague Janine recommended. It's Odelia and the Varmint by Jenny Moore. It's a fast-paced, rip-roaring Victorian adventure with twists and turns galore. I mean, other than that and the fact that it's got pirates, like that's pretty much all I know, but I'm excited about it. And Janine, again, also recommended this book, The Unlikely Heroes Club by Kate Foster. And I don't know a lot about it again, but the main character's name is Ollie, so I mean, we're already going well. Spelt differently, but still. An absolutely delightful celebration of friendship and community. This story made my heart sing. Then I wasn't planning on picking up any YA, but when I saw Gary Lonesborough has a new book, like, it's an auto buy for me. This is called We Didn't Think It Through, and Gary Lonesborough is the author of The Boy from the Mish, which was one of my favorite YA books that I read last year. I mean, it's one of my favorite YA books that I've ever read. Who are we kidding? The Boy from the Mish was a beautiful Aboriginal coming of age story that also featured one of my favorite queer romances. Anything Gary Lonesborough put out next was going to be an auto buy for me. The Boy from the Mish was that good. So now I suppose I can tell you about The Hidden Palace. Now, I don't want to spoil it for you. This is not a spoiler-filled like reading vlog in the same way my big book challenge is. So I will say just simply that I loved it. I just loved it. Now, to be perfectly frank, I think if you didn't love the first book, and specifically if you didn't love the character-centeredness of it all and the atmosphere, if they weren't your two favorite things about the first book, then I would not bother picking up the second book. Because the first book is such a solid standalone, and this is basically just what happened 15 years later. Like what else the Djinni and the Golem got up to. There is definitely a plot, and I did really enjoy how we got to like get to know some of the characters who were very much like secondary sideline characters in the first book. But having said that, where I said that the first book kind of lacked a sense of direction and momentum, and even though stuff was happening, it didn't always feel like there was a lot happening. It didn't feel very plot-centric, and I enjoyed it anyway, but I would say that is even more true for this book. But like I said, I went into this just wanting to be back with these characters and back in this world and just kind of like sink into it. There is something so relaxing and sweet, bittersweet about these books that I just wanted to be back in. And I got that 100 times over reading this second book. It was kind of like a cozy read without specifically being a cozy read. Like, I know now people think of cozy and they just immediately think of like Legends and Lattes, but to me this felt more comforting and cozy than Legends of Lattes ever achieved, but it also felt so much grander and more poignant. So yeah, I loved it, and I'm sad it's over. Anyway, I suppose that's most of the stuff I wanted to tell you about. Now finally, I know most people will have left the video at some point and it will just be a few of you here at the end. I just wanted to let you know that I got some pretty sad news today, this afternoon, just a couple of hours ago. And that is basically that my friend, who has been really unwell for the past few months, she has decided to die tomorrow. Voluntary euthanasia is legal in Victoria now, and because of her condition she has access to it, and I'm so grateful that she does. But obviously I'm just devastated. I'm devastated for her and for her partner, who is also a dear friend of mine, and I'm devastated for me. You know, I'm losing a friend, and it's gonna be a hard few weeks, few months, years. You know, losing someone, grief never really just goes away, does it? And so I suppose just simply I'm not exactly sure if there'll be a video up next week. There might be. It might be a great distraction or something that just, you know, feels right for me to do. But I also might just not be in the headspace for it. I know most people will not notice if I don't upload for a week or two, but I mean, if you're one of the people who've made it all the way to the end of the video, you're one of the people who is most likely to notice. So I just wanted to let you know. But anyway, thank you so much for being here with me this week. Thanks for hanging out and helping me get back to work. I know that it was just like a 3-hour meeting and it was pretty chill considering, but it was still a really big step. And I got to read a really good book as well. So, I mean, that's always nice. A big thank you as always goes to my patrons over on Patreon, and especially a big thank you to Olivia, Lynette Brown and Marie. But that is all from me for now. I will talk to you again soon. Until then, happy reading and so much love. Bye.